Oh, look out, Anthony Kim, a.k. is back, and we got footage of him in live, and we're going to take a look and identify his cause and effect and what 12 years of separation can do based on our last footage. And he is like the Sasquatch. You can see him here and there, but this is the first time we actually have evidence of his current swing, and we're going to look at it today and see the cause and effect and compare it to his older self. Now granted, it's 12 years apart. We're going to see some different flexions, some different mobility in the body, but based on my philosophy that everyone has a DNA'd golf swing in them, we will see his DNA'd golf swing. If you do like this type of content, hit that like, share, support us any way you can. We have memberships that go for 99 cents. That money goes straight to the Hilderhood Foundation in Cape Flats, South Africa, to get low-income children into golf. But enough of that hogwash. Let's take a look at the great Anthony Flashy Belt himself, Kim. Okay, we have Anthony Kim. Before we get started, we're going to give some credit due where these videos are from. You can see the one on the right side is from ratetheswing.com. We also have Foreplay Golf and also the San Francisco Golf Performance Center. So if you want to go check their stuff out, I'll put their links in the description below. I know that we kind of borrow each other's golf videos for swing analysis, but I want to make sure we give the credit where it's due. So face on, we see the new Anthony Kim on the left side, the older Anthony Kim on the right side. We did that backwards. So the older video on the right side, the newer video on the left side, and obviously 12 years has come and gone, and it's can't believe time flies that quickly. But let's look at that swing, and we can see rhythm is about the same, overall core is about the same, we see the rotations about the same, we don't see any limitations. Well, we're going to slow it down and take a look at what I think is starting to change based on a few things on his spine angle and how he's starting to use that tilting a little bit more efficiently, and we'll definitely see some evidence of this on the down the line. Okay, we got the lines in Barney purple. We got the spine angle line, which is a long one, and that crooked one over his shoulders is his shoulder tilt line. We can see the setup is basically the same. We might see that there's more weighting on his right side, and the newer swing versus the left side look more equal. But this is key because he is starting to use his weight distribution a little bit more in the newer swing. He is tilting a little bit more. He is not turning as much as he used to, and I attribute part of that to age myself. I noticed my rotation definitely slowing down. But let's take a look at this first initial move, and we're going to draw. And I know that this is slightly different camera angles. The one on the right side is more eye level. The one on the left side, the person's taking it is either taller than him or standing on a box. Who knows what it is, but there's definitely some issues there. So I drew some red lines. That's basically where the crisscross happens, and it goes straight down to the ground. That is where the center of the swing is, and we can see that there is slightly more tilting going on the new swing, and it's ever so slight, but it does play an important role. Ball position looks about the same. Everything looks about the same. Let's take a look at that first move. We can see the new Anthony Kim. He moves a lot more off the golf ball. We can see the older Anthony Kim on the right side doesn't move as much off the golf ball. We can see right where we get to the top of the swing, we're going to start to look at some differences here. We can see the older Anthony Kim on the right side stayed more in his spine angle. He didn't shift a lot of that weight towards the right side. As we see the new Anthony Kim, and if we draw a line in green from where his shoulder is straight down to the ground versus where his shoulder is straight down to the ground, we can see that more of that weighting is facing his right foot, and we can see the tilting. We can see his moving his upper body a little bit more away from the target. So we're starting to see his power V. If we draw a line here, this is that power V. He's getting more away from the ball versus the old one. We can see less distance away from that power V. Now this is where he starts to tilt more on the way down and reduce the hand manipulation as he rotates. But what is very impressive too is look at the position of the club. It is exactly the same as it was 12 years ago, and with that baggy shirt on the left side, it is hard to see the turn of the hips, but we can get kind of an evidence based on the tilting of your knees. So if we back up and start to redraw the knee tilt, let's see if we can figure this out. There's one knee tilt and there's the other knee tilt, so it looks about the same in terms of hip tilt, and the shoulder turn looks a little bit more of the older Anthony Kim, but we're starting to see more weight distribution of the newer Anthony Kim. Now what does all that mean? Well, let's take a look at the lower body action. So as we get down to the golf ball, we can see they both slide left to the impact position. That's closing that gap on that power V. But because the newer Anthony Kim has a little bit more spine tilt backwards, he's trying to launch this ball, probably decrease the spin rate to try and catch up for some distance. Now because the newer angle of Anthony Kim on the left side of the screen, let's redraw this in green so we don't confuse this. So look at that green line versus the purple line on the right side. It is definitely tilted more away from the target. This is key to allow that weight distribution to come back. Now let both get the weight distribution over. Let's go back down to impact and see, based on the leaning back, that increased leaning back of the green line just past impact. And now let's take a look at the weighting. So we can see clearly he's leaning further back on the left side versus the right side. He's not as far back, but the clear indication of this is, let's draw it in yellow. Look at the shoulder tilt and look at the new shoulder tilt. You see how much more shoulder tilt he has established, and what this will do is it will keep his hands more out in front of the chest as he turns through the golf ball as well, where here you can see the hands were still out in the front of the chest. And what this does for the new one is, the more tilt you can establish, it will keep those hands out in front of the chest. It can help you come more from the inside. You don't rely on as much turn at impact, and he is definitely increasing his launch angle. So in relation to his spine angle at the start of his swing to just past impact, look how much further his hands are. Let's draw this in red now from the relation of his spine angle versus the old one. We can see there's just less travel time because that means he's standing more upright, not as much tilting. And let's clean all these lines up and keep going past impact, and we can still see that right shoulder is definitely more down versus the older one. We see those hands are doing a wonderful job staying connected. Look at the footwork. This is another indication. So if we put a circle around that left lead leg, look at how much that is staying grounded. So there's definitely a lot more secure on his footwork. So he is not spinning as much with his lower body and playing catch up. It is more of a one-piece impact position. That's what he's probably feeling. And you'll see more of this as we keep going through. Look at that left foot now. It is completely up in the air with the toe. That's a lot of spinning action. We see slight up in the toe. We can definitely see more turn on the older motion, but this is key to everything. Look at how much more those hands are connected to the core versus the old hands. They're disconnected past impact. There's definitely more hand manipulation on the older swing versus the newer swing. So, like fine wine, his swing might have gotten better with a little bit of age, but let's take a look at the down the line with an iron to really see some changes. Okay, down the line, this is where we start to see a little setup change that we didn't really see from a face-on driver, and this is where the body weight is centered. So you see that Barney purple line, that's his spine angle line. The lower long line is his lower plane line, and the short one at the top is his upper plane line. Typically, that's where your arms need to get to if this was a robot swinging it. So we're not robots, but you get the idea, and we see that cause and effect based on where you want to get to and where you actually do. But initially, what we can see, the newer Anthony Kim on the left side, which is taken this past week, versus the older one, which was taken 12 years ago. I believe that's Sherwood Country Club, if I'm not mistaken. So we're going to go from the center of his arches straight up in the sky, and we can see that, bam, they just go right up through those intersecting points in the center of his arches straight up to the sky. So we see the one on the right side is a little bit toe heavy. You can already see that, and we can see how much body is on the left side of the new swing and how much less of that body is on the left side of the older swing. So what this does is to maintain that spine angle. We can see that degree is different. So let's get our little degree tool out and see what degree is that spine angle. So before we get to this, let's look at that spine angle line, what it is now versus what it used to be. And this is eyeballing it, keep that in mind, but we can definitely see a difference there. With the eyeball assessment, it's probably 8 to 12 degrees difference. So what this might do is, the older Anthony Kim, because his spine angle is more downward facing, it could help his hands go more up and down sooner. So we might see a more vertical lift with his hands on the right side versus the new side, more of a turn. Another thing this does is the older Anthony Kim has to maintain his posture in a more severe tilting at impact, which could be a cause for concern as you do get older. So if we go down to impact, what we can see is, look at how much more of the lower back has to rotate around a upper back that is going down versus the new one. There's less of that angle to maintain. But the key is once you get past impact, you can see here, to maintain that extra 8 or 9 degrees, you have to dip a lot lower with the upper body, and this will start to put pressure in that lower vertebrae right where that X is. Where the new X, there's less pressure going on here because he is standing taller. So I think this setup change has a little bit to do with age, but also identifying that you don't need to hold that posture quite as much as he used to. We can see how much lower that club comes out on his old swing versus much higher on the new swing. So this means that his hands and arms are doing a better job of keeping up with that rotation instead of having to work around the body as he rotates and holds that that posture through impact. But let's go straight from the beginning and look at the cause and effect on the takeaway. So we redrew those lines, but keep this in mind that these camera angles are not identical, so it is going to change the way the club works back visually, but you can see a difference already. Club face is flaring a little bit more open versus the newer swing. It is staying more true to that spine angle, and we can see how the club face works definitely more vertical on the old swing versus the new swing. It is staying closer, actually right on plane, where it should be on that lower plane line. And remember, this is all due to that setup change. And we know from the face on that he gets a little bit more sway off the golf ball to help that weight distribution, but from this point on, we can see that it's still the same arm motion. He still gets that arm relatively close to his upper plane line. And let's do our little triangle check here and draw the triangle on both of these and see where that triangle works its way down to that lower plane line. And this, you can see the one on the right side is definitely more up and down versus the one on the left side. And do we follow that? So you can see how the grip of the club stays on that line on the left side much longer for 2, possibly 3 frames, where the one on the right gets off that within the first frame. Now he is doing that because he's getting the club right in his plane line, and it's pretty much perpendicular to his spine angle. So what we're looking at here is, let's draw this in red. We're going to draw the club where the club is pointing at this halfway checkpoint, and we can see the one on the right side is definitely pointing much higher at the golf ball versus the one on the left side, which will mean there has to be some excessive tilting from this point on the right side. And both of these golf swings from here will do the same motion that he has ingrained, so the arms are in a slightly different position based on his setup. It is closer to that lower plane line quicker than the older motion. So we see right in this position, look at that right elbow, it is below that lower plane line versus the old one, it is above that plane line. And this all has to do with his setup changes. So once we get past, we clear these lines up so we don't get so confused. Let's take a look past impact. What we're going to look at is look at the exit path of the club. Like we said before, look how much lower that golf club is on the right side versus working its way back up to that secondary plane line more naturally. So the one on the left side is actually a lot easier on the back, and I believe it's because he's 12 years older and he has addressed this with his body change now. Now keep in mind, he is still one of the better ball strikers in the world, and we do change slightly, but you can see the basic motion of his swing is there. It is just moving differently based on his setup changes. And what we can see here, well past impact, is look at how much of that upper body is still hanging over versus the new upper body. You can see it's caught up to his whole body. So we get a nice taller posture versus here we get a slanted posture. So a lot of this has to do with protecting the body, but also, again, like I said, he's getting a little bit older and he has to work a way around that. And then lastly, for those of you who think there is a tilting issue, let's take a look at how effectively he tilts through the golf ball if it's the same amount of tilting. And let's draw right at the top where his tilting is. And again, this is eyeballing it, so it's not exact, but it will give us a close idea of where that tilt is. So you can see it's about 43 degrees, the same one. Arms are in a different position based on his setup. Now, as we get down into impact, 1 frame past impact, we'll do it on there. And we can see the new tilting is going to be a little bit over 20 degrees, which is good for the tour average. And the older one we're going to look at and see if that's any difference. And eyeballing it, it's about 20 degrees as well. So pretty close to the same tilting, but we're tilting differently based on the setup because the one on the left side definitely doesn't look as tilted, even though we are increasing our tilt the exact same. So what can you take from this? 8K is back. I'm looking forward to see what he shoots and how he plays. Obviously, that comes down to the short game, but never take these people for granted. Once you are the best in the world, it is very hard to lose that game. Even the worst best in the world are still better than 99.99999% of the population out there. So I'm looking forward to seeing it. If you do like that, hit that like and subscribe. Share with somebody you know as we give out free education. And if you want to submit your video for swing analysis, go ahead and send it down the link below. Hope you guys have a great day. I'll see you next week.